Chapter 12 is called Mr. George Jessup. Mr. Jessup and his wife Mary were a quiet couple. They had owned their 200-acre farm for the past 15 years, and farming life suited them. Every morning, Mr. Jessup would wake at sunrise and be out performing his daily duties. Feeding and milking the cattle twice a day, tending to the crops and fields, trips into town for supplies. It was non-stop, tiring work. Just the way he liked it. Mr. Jessup was not one of those people who could spend hours sat in front of the TV or out seeing friends. He enjoyed his own company and was happiest when he was kept busy. Mr. Jessup was very good at his job and was proud of his healthy cattle, who, he was pretty sure, made the best milk in the country. Part of him wished, though, that he had been a farmer in the days of local dairies, where customers would have known that their milk had come from his farm, Jessup's Dairy, labelled on every bottle. Instead, his milk all went straight to the supermarkets, with customers having no idea where it had come from. Not only that, but the supermarkets would all fight over who could sell it cheapest, meaning that the money Mr. Jessup made from the milk became smaller and smaller as the years went by. Luckily, Mr. and Mrs. Jessup were experts at cutting costs and lived a rather frugal lifestyle. Mary, the traditional housewife who would sew patches on trousers, darn holes in socks, and ensure that not a single scrap of food from their weekly shop was wasted, kept the household budget in check. Meanwhile, George, the man who refused to even buy the daily newspaper when you could get yesterday's for free, would not cave in to even the smallest extravagance. Problems began to occur for the Jessups, though, when they began to notice far more pests than usual on their farm. Mrs. Jessup was the first to notice. A hole burrowed through the centre of yesterday's bread, and droppings all over the kitchen counters, clear signs of mice. At the same time, Mr. Jessup began noticing huge chunks of his crops being ravaged. This was a huge concern, as he needed his crops to feed the cattle and could not afford for them to be wasted. Rabbit burrows in the fallow field led him to the source of his problem. Most farmers were well used to dealing with rabbits, and Mr. Jessup himself knew about, but also had to rule out many possible solutions. Shooting them would be one easy way to sort things out. Maybe the Brackets would even sell them in their butcher shop. But with that Hargreaves kid living on the farm, he really didn't want any risk of accidents. He'd also heard about some farmers putting weasels down the burrows, but how he'd go about hiring a weasel was anyone's guess. Plus, it was bound to be expensive. The stress of the mice and the rabbits was really starting to get Mr. Jessup down. As he was going about his errands in town, the lady at the farm supplies shop must have noticed his low mood, for she immediately asked him what was wrong. Mr. Jessup explains about the mice and the rabbits and how he didn't have enough money to sort them out. The lady gave a little smile and said that she had something round the back which could be of use to him. Mr. Jessup was much happier as he headed back to the farm later that day. He felt like he'd managed to get the bargain of the century. An entire sack of poison pellets for a quarter of the price, guaranteed to take care of both problems in no time at all, apparently. So, every week, Mr. Jessup would lay the pellets down near the rabbit burrows, as well as around the perimeter of the fields and farmhouse, confident that his problem would be taken care of. Not once, though, did Mr. Jessup question why the poison was not out on the shop floor for general sale, nor why the lady was so keen to sell it to him at such a discounted price. Had Mr. Jessup spent any time socialising with the other farmers, they would have all warned him against using such a form of pest control. He would have been told about how it had been made illegal, about the threat of it contaminating his crops, and how dangerous it could be to other forms of wildlife, birds, cats, even dogs. And that's the end of chapter 12. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.